Stocks surge on Wall Street for the second straight session, led by strong earnings. Asian markets rise on a strong handover from Wall Street. The gift Nifty is also suggesting a higher start for the Indian markets. Crude prices rise as weak manufacturing data in the United States sparks hope of an earlier than expected rate cut from the Fed, taking Brent crude to above $88 a barrel. Gold prices remain range-bound to around two-week lows of about $2,300 an ounce. After the biggest ever revenue decline since 2012, Tesla gets ready to advance the launch of new models, including low-cost cars. Elon Musk says the EV maker is looking to accelerate its entry into new markets. Speaking about job cuts, Musk said that it was important to reorganize the company for future growth. The stock surges over 12% in after-hours trading. Tata Consumers delivers a mixed fourth quarter. Domestic revenue growth meets estimates, but beverage volume growth disappoints. Margins comes in ahead of expectations, but a one-time expense dents its net profit. And in key numbers to track today, Hindustan Unilever is expected to deliver a 2 to 3% volume growth and margin expansion in the fourth quarter. Axis Bank's deposit growth is likely to outpace its loan growth, while net interest margins may be under pressure. LTI Mindtree is expected to deliver a weak set of numbers as growth comes under pressure. Good morning, and in the Mumbai News Center, I am Hormuz Fatakia. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets have opened this morning, and it's an extremely positive start across the Asia Pacific. The Japanese indices are up over 2%. That is the Nikkei. As you can see, the Taiwanese index has also now crossed the mark of 20,000. It's trading with gains of 2% this morning. The Hang Seng is also up 1%. The South Korean indices were also trading with gains of more than 1% or 1.5%. So good going there for the Asian markets. The gift Nifty is also suggesting a positive start for our own markets. An 80-point higher implied open is what the gift Nifty is suggesting at this point of time. The Nifty has been gaining for 3 days in a row, so we might see a fourth straight day of a positive start for the Indian markets as well. But the handover from Wall Street was also a very positive one, as their winning streak continued on Tuesday, led by strong earnings. The Dow Jones surged over 250 points. The S&P 500 gained over 1%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq also settled with gains of 1.5%. Companies like Spotify, GE Aerospace, UPS, General Motors reported strong earnings, and the stock reactions are up for you on the screen. Meanwhile, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said that the US economy remains strong but could tip into a stagflation. He also added that the current geopolitical situation is likely the most complicated and dangerous since the Second World War. And now let's get you some important opinion on the market setup, the forecast for earnings in the US, and more coming in from Goldman Sachs' chief US equity strategist David Kostin and Charles Schwab's Liz Ann Saunders. Listen into what they had to say.
Pretty much the market at a little over 5,000 would suggest maybe a couple of percent appreciation from now till the end of the year. And the expectation is, what are we seeing now for the first quarter results? We're about 16% of the way through earnings season. We've seen thus far, most of the companies, about 65% of the companies have actually beat consensus expectations on the bottom line, and about a third have beat expectations on the top line. What that suggests to us is that companies are able and have been demonstrating the ability to kind of squeak over a little bit margin, and margin is basically hold there until a little bit higher. Goldman Sachs economics view is that inflation will ultimately move lower by the end of the year, and rates will also come a little bit lower. So that's sort of the expectation we have in our model, is that earnings will be roughly, margins will be roughly flat, and then ultimately it's a little bit about economic growth will drive sales, and that's largely the reason for earnings to be higher for this year.
You know, broadly, the market had gotten a bit oversold, especially in areas that had really taken a drubbing. You know, the technology sector had dropped intraday to only 10% of stocks trading above 50-day moving averages. And I think that enticed some buyers, not to mention earnings from some of the mega cap names this week, maybe elevating some interest on the buy side. I think it also didn't eliminate a lot of the froth, but maybe ease some of the froth that in and of itself had been a concern. So I think we probably revert back to the kind of leadership we were seeing before, but you're going to get these moves on a day-to-day basis where some of the laggards get a bid.
And let's now get you the final update in our global market wrap this morning. Tuesday was a strong day for the European equities as well, with the German DAX surging over 1.5%, the French CAC rising 65% or close to 1%, while the British FTSE hit an all-time high. The pan-European stock 600 jumped over 1% to a one-week high, led by technology and retail stocks. Meanwhile, business activity in the Eurozone expanded at the fastest pace in nearly a year in April, led by a recovery in the bloc service industry, which offset the deeper manufacturing downturn that the bloc has seen. So these are the updates from the global markets, but how will all of these cues impact the Indian markets? We have our research team joining in with our Power Prep segment with the trade setup, the stocks that are likely to be in focus. First up, morning Ekta. The Nifty took a bit of a pause yesterday, but the highlight was the fall in the wicks. What are you picking up this morning?
Morning. Well, absolutely. Like you mentioned, yesterday the sensex Nifty did end the day in the green. So that was the larger headline. The markets gained for the third straight session. The India VIX, like you mentioned, slid 20%. It was the biggest fall that we've seen in 5 years, I think since 2019. Now, interestingly, FIIs net sold over 3,000 odd crores yesterday, but DIIs have been putting their weight in. So they bought around 2,900 odd crores in yesterday's trading session in the cash market, and they bought close to 19,000 crores in the month of April itself. That's the DIIs. Now, in terms of the global setup, it seems to be quite firm because the UK FTSE hit another record high in yesterday's trading session. We have the US manufacturing activity, which hit a 4-month low, came in at 49.9 in the month of March, and that's fueled hopes of a rate cut in the US. So that's probably, worked in the contrary, and the US markets ended higher for the second straight session. We have Asia, which is largely in the green. So the Japanese markets are leading in Asia right now. And the GIFT Nifty is probably poised for a positive start. In terms of result reactions, we have 361, Tata Elxsi, Cyan, DLM, Tata Consumer, all of these stocks in focus. And in terms of results today, HUL, Axis, LTI, Mindtree, AU Small Finance Bank, Equitas, Macrotech Developers, Syngene, Dalmia Bharat are a couple of these stocks which we will keep on our radar in terms of results to watch out for. So it's going to be an interesting day, a lot of cues picking up when it comes to the earnings season.
Interesting day and an earnings heavy day as well. Thanks a lot, Ekta, with all the cues that you need to watch out for this morning. Now over to Sudarshan, who would list out the stocks that you need to watch out for this morning. Good morning, Sudarshan. What do you have for us?
Morning, Homa. So earnings flow is increased. So I'll talk about all those companies which have reported earnings first. So starting with Tata Consumers, it has reported mixed Q4 earnings. Revenue is at rupees 3,927 crore against poll of rupees 3,991 crore. EBITDA has come in at rupees 630 crore versus poll of rupees 601 crore. And this increase in EBITDA that you're seeing it's because of sharp fall in inventory costs. India Beverages business revenue is up 3% versus estimate of 9 to 10% growth, and tea volumes were flat versus expectation of 2 to 3% growth. ICICI Prudential has reported mixed set of earnings. VNB margin sees a further decline due to shift in product mix. Margin has come in at 21.5% versus 32% year-on-year and versus 22.9% sequentially. But company says it will focus on actual VNB growth going forward. Next is MCX. It has reported an improved set of earnings sequentially. Sharp fall in software costs aids operating numbers. Software expenses are down 84% sequentially at rupees 23 crore. And because of that, EBITDA has come in at rupees 102 crore versus EBITDA loss of rupees 20 crore sequentially. Tata Elxsi, very weak earnings. Constant currency revenue is down 0.6% sequentially, and it's because of sharp fall in media and communication revenue, which contributes 33% to total revenue. Media and communication constant currency revenue is down 4% sequentially and 4.6% year-on-year. Nelco EBITDA has slipped 13% and margin has fallen 250 bips year-on-year. Cyient profit is up 80%, revenue up 30%, margin is at 10.5% versus 11.5% year-on-year. Keep an eye on IIFL Finance. Special audit has commenced as directed by RBI, and this measure was part of RBI's supervisory action with respect to loan disbursement practices. Also keep an eye on Lupin and Dr. Reddy's because of the announcements they have made.
Plenty of stocks to watch out for as always. Thanks a lot, Sudarshan, for joining in. And lastly, Nigel is here with the F&O cues this morning. Morning, Nigel. The VIX was a fall there. We didn't do much yesterday, but the bulls don't see any further challenge this morning.
Well, that's right. Partly of, part of that fall that we saw in the final hour of trade could be because of the Nifty Financial Services Index, which did play out the expiry. So that ended at the low point of the day, and there is some overlap. So that's why, in fact, the Nifty couldn't hold on to the gains that we had at around 2:30 p.m. we couldn't hold on to it at around 3:30 p.m. What did the FIs do yesterday? They've added mile long, mile short positioning. They continue to remain net short with 66% of their positions on the short side. And in absolute terms, it's around 108 lakh contracts odd. So that's the important figure out there. But as you mentioned, the VIX, that collapsed in yesterday's trading session. Maybe, in fact, we are setting ourselves up for a bit of a breakout. Last 4 months or so, we have been in this band of around 22,100, 22,200 odd, and we're hovering around those levels. So there's a big drop that we're seeing out there. The street seems to be, getting quite bullish now. The problem is, are we getting complacent? But part of the fall yesterday that we saw on the VIX could be because, there were some of these out-of-the-money puts that were bought. Yesterday, they got unbound. That was up for you on the screen. You have close to around 45 lakh shares that got unbound on the put side. On the call side, though, that continues to see some bit of writing. So the 22,300, 22,400, 22,500 calls, well, they saw a fair bit of addition in trade. Which brings us to the levels. We are in this band of around 350, 400 points. On the upside, 22,500, 22,550, that's the level that you need to cross. If you can get past that, then you're on your way to 23,000 odd. On the downside, going by the options data and going by the technical level, I'm looking at the 50 DMA, 22,190. The Nifty Bank plays out expiry today, so those levels as well come up for you on the screen. GIFT 50 suggesting a green start. You'll need to build on to that. Back to you.
Green start indeed. Thanks a lot, Nigel, for all the updates from the F&O space. But time for a short break here on Power Breakfast. Up next, Tata Consumers reported a mixer of numbers for its fourth quarter. We'll get you all the earnings fine prints on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Back with us on Power Breakfast. Let's now focus on some important earnings. Tata Consumer reported a mixed set of fourth quarter numbers. The margin saw some expansion while the net profit missed estimates. Mangalam is joining in with the earnings fine print. Morning, Mangalam. How did the numbers look like?
Well, it was indeed a mixed set that Tata Consumer reported, and the mixed nature came in from the top line and the operational performance as well. The revenue came in at around 3927 crores, which is an 8.5% growth as against street expectations of about 10% growth. So high single digit versus low double digit expectations. But it was the EBITDA which moved higher ahead of expectations, so which is why the margins came in at around 16% versus an expectation of around 15% itself. The net profit, yes, was lower than the street expectation, but that's largely because of an exceptional expense. So one won't pay much attention to the miss on the bottom line here. What's good in these numbers? The India revenue came in at around 10.4%. The street was working with a number between 9 to 10%. And that revenue was led by the India Foods business, which including Capital Foods, that's Ching's, came in at around 20%. The street was working with a number of around 12 to 15% there. The international revenue, that grew higher by about 7%. Again, the higher end of the range. Importantly, the margins in the international business improved, and that was a big positive as well. Growth businesses, which is basically Sampann as well as Soulful and Nourishco, are now 18% of the sales of the company as against 15%. So growth businesses are doing well. This is something that we'll be watching out for going forward. And the other thing we'll be watching out for going forward is Capital Foods, which is Ching's products, are now available at 95% of TCPL's distributors, so which will entail scale out here. So that's something which is a story for FY25 and FY26. What missed expectations, however, were the India beverages business. That grew just 3%. The state was expecting a 9 to 10% growth. Why did that happen? Because tea volumes were absolutely flat. Here as well, one was expecting low single-digit growth out there. Nourishco, the revenue out there grew just 13% because of delayed summer. The state again was working with a number of over 30%. And as a result of which, the Nourishco full-year guidance missed estimates. Importantly, we have Starbucks as well, which grew just 7% in the fourth quarter as against the entire year, where it grew about 12%. So there's a mixed nature. See a bit of red on Tata Consumer today.
A mixed quarter indeed. And in fact, we'll be joined by the management of Tata Consumers. The MD and CEO, Sunil D'Souza, will join us today at 10:45 this morning to discuss the earnings in detail. And Mangalam will be posing a lot of questions to him, I'm sure of that. Do stay tuned to CNBC TV18 for that conversation. Back with us here on Power Breakfast, and as promised, Manisha Gupta now joins in with all the cues from the commodity space. Good morning, Manisha. What are you picking up this morning?
Well, after those couple of days where we have seen sharp declines in many of these commodities, well, today seems to be a day when we're looking at some coming back here, but majorly because the dollar index is now trading below 106, and that is giving some support to markets. Also, what the street will now watch out for is the first quarter GDP numbers from US and the PCE index, which is the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index data that comes in from US as well. And this is Fed's preferred inflation guard. So markets would try to understand what the number is and what it can mean for the interest rate cuts going forward. Ahead of that, we've seen the gold prices gain up above $2,300 an ounce yet again. Crude oil prices also are seeing some support because of the dollar decline and because the markets are looking at the European business activity expanding at the fastest pace in a year. It also has to do with the kind of sanctions that Iran oil companies could see. That's a developing story, and as and when you see more concrete statements coming in for that would impact crude oil prices also. In the meanwhile, base metal prices have gone in for some profit taking. So we did see copper prices at a 2-year highs and aluminum at a 15-month highs. But overnight, it has been a 1 to 3% of a cut come in for across metal prices.
Keep an eye out on all of these commodity cues as well. Thanks a lot, Manisha, for joining in. But on to the big earnings that came in overnight. Shares of Tesla surged over 12% in after-hours trading after reporting its first quarter numbers, after Elon Musk said that the company would prepone plans to produce affordable electric vehicles. Parikshit is joining in on the phone line to tell us more. Good morning, Parikshit. How are the numbers and what did Elon Musk mention on the earnings call?
Well, Elon Musk's behavior on the conference call was something that the Wall Street was watching very, very closely. And the reason why the shares are probably up 8 to 12% is probably because of the preponed timeline for new launches this year. He also indicated that the low-cost $25,000 vehicle will be launched as soon as possible, though he did not give an exact timeline. Musk also went on to say that Tesla sales in 2024 will be higher than that in 2023. At the same time, we also will see Tesla trying to utilize its maximum capacity of close to 3 million units, and the company is working towards 50% increase in production over 2023 before investing in new lines. There were also questions from investors about Elon Musk's leadership, about how much time he's devoting to Tesla, whether he's looking to step back from the post of CEO in the next few years. So Musk indicated that he continues to give a majority of his time to Tesla on a daily basis, and he will continue to making the company prosperous. He was fully focused on an electric and autonomous future, saying that autonomous is the big thing. He urged all investors to try the autonomous vehicles that Tesla is making, and he also hinted that the fully self-driving vehicle suite, they are in talks with one major OEM in the world to license this particular software and technology.
Thanks a lot, Parikshit, for all the updates there on Tesla. And in fact, let us listen into what Tesla CEO Elon Musk said during the company's earnings call.
In terms of the new product roadmap, there's been a lot of talk about our upcoming vehicle line in the past several weeks. We've updated our future vehicle lineup to accelerate the launch of new models ahead of previously mentioned start of production in the second half of 2025. So we expect it to be more like the early 2025, if not late this year. These new vehicles, including more affordable models, will use aspects of the next generation platform, as well as aspects of our current platforms, and will be able to be produced on the same manufacturing lines as our current vehicle lineup. Tesla constitutes the majority of my work time, and I work pretty much every day of the week. It's rare for me to take a Sunday afternoon off. So I'm going to make sure Tesla is very prosperous.
And from global cues to the big Indian event, that is the Lok Sabha elections. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has repeatedly told voters that the Congress manifesto talks about redistributing wealth of private citizens. This has given rise to yet another controversy this polling season. While the Congress has called out the Prime Minister and knocked on the Election Commission's door for what it alleges is a lie, the Prime Minister has doubled down on his charges at subsequent rallies. CNBC-TV18's Abhishek Datta Roy finds out what could have prompted this latest furor.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has not pulled his punches as he campaigns for a third term in office. And one pot shot he has taken multiple times is the allegation that the Congress manifesto promises redistributing people's private wealth. He did this first at Banswara in Rajasthan.
पहले जब उनकी सरकार थी उन्होंने कहा था कि देश की संपत्ति पर पहला अधिकार मुसलमानों का है। इसका मतलब ये संपत्ति इकट्ठी करके किसको बांटेंगे? जिनके ज्यादा बच्चे हैं उनको बांटेंगे। घुसपैठियों को बांटेंगे।
And again at Aligarh in Uttar Pradesh.
हमारे देश में माताओं बहनों के पास जो सोना होता है, कितना ही कम क्यों न हो, वो स्त्री धन होता है, पवित्र माना जाता है, कानून भी उसकी रक्षा करता है। अब इनकी नजर कानून बदलकर हमारी माताओं बहनों की संपत्ति छीनने का भी खेल खेला जा रहा है। उनका मंगलसूत्र, उस पर उन लोगों की नजर है।
The Congress took issue with both instances. It has complained to the Election Commission and called the Prime Minister's statement communal and divisive. It has also pointed out that its manifesto does not have anything about seizing personal wealth of citizens. The manifesto reads, and I quote, Congress will conduct a nationwide socio-economic and caste census to enumerate the castes and subcastes and their socio-economic conditions. Based on the data, we will strengthen the agenda for affirmative action. End quote. The caste census is not a new idea.
हमारा पहला कदम पूरे देश में जाति जनगणना को करवाने का होगा और हम पता लगाएंगे इस देश में दलित कितने, आदिवासी कितने, पिछड़े कितने.
The word redistribution does not appear in the manifesto either. It does, however, highlight that the party will address the growing inequality of wealth and income through suitable changes in policies. Neither does the manifesto refer to any faith or religion by name in this context, saying only that the party will respect and uphold the fundamental right to practice one's faith and the rights guaranteed to religious minorities under the Constitution. The Election Commission has confirmed that it has received Congress's complaint against the Prime Minister's remark, but is yet to act on the matter. In Mumbai, with Shreya Salvi, this is Abhishek Dattaroy.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast. Bazaar Morning Call takes the action forward. From myself and the entire team that put this show together, thank you so much for watching.